Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
Pod Smash.
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer.
We are your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I'm Penguin.
I am... Oh, yes. You're a Penguin. I am Termite. We are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
What, did I say Termite or something? Did I say I'm Penguin?
No,
I'm Termite?
I just talked at the same time you did, and it just screwed up the whole rhythm.
That's
I
fine.
don't know why I did that. It was totally...
We are, tonight we're talking about the thing you care about, a thing you maybe care about, maybe you don't, but hopefully you will care about by the end of the episode. We're talking about, I guess it's a conversation that's sort of a mix between, like, indie studios, AA studios, and kind of what separates them, what's the difference, but, like, all the weird gray areas in between. I think we had originally titled this, like, what happens, like, when does indie stop becoming indie? Because it's been either funded or backed or just straight up acquired by a AAA studio, a publisher, but they still try to like pretend they're indie. I don't know. We're going to talk about all that and more because it's a complicated subject and it's weird because technically indie just means independent, but it's come to sort of mean something more kind of like RPG, right? Indie and the term indie and the term RPG are similar in the sense that like a role-playing game implies way more than just role playing, like playing a role. Similarly, indie belies more than just a developer that's independent in many ways. So we're gonna talk about that and all those differences. But first, we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So I saw that you poured yourself a beautiful looking stout, and I would like to hear about it.
Ooh, you know all about this stout. This is nothing surprising or new. But Thanksgiving was last week, audio listeners. It's this week for us. So I figured it was a great time to pull this out of the fridge, pick it up off the shelf, because it's time, homies. It is time for Hardywood Gingerbread Stout. I am drinking the epitome of Christmas beer, Hardywood, right out of Virginia. Their original gingerbread stout. It's an absolute staple. Every single year I have to get this. In fact, I have a pre-order for the big giant holiday pack that they have that has like all the variants of gingerbread stout, all the new ones coming out this year, all the stuff. Like I can't wait. But this is just the original one because it's in the stores now. You can buy it everywhere.
I almost grabbed some. I considered grabbing some. I was up at I was picking up groceries from Aldi. I decided to swing by Publix because I was like, Publix certainly has a decent selection of beer, and they do. At least they have stuff that I haven't gotten before. So there was one that I really wanted to get like next time I'm up there.
Ooh,
because it had like it's called like Volcano Mix, but it had like blueberries, elderberries. It was like a sour berry. But I was like, that's just a little bit not Christmas. So I ended up getting something else that I will be drinking in a future episode. Not tonight, though. But
okay,
go ahead.
Sorry.
The
can just says it's an imperial milk stout with cinnamon, vanilla, ginger, and honey. And I miss... I guess that's the other... Oh, there it is. Tastes like freaking Christmas. Our score, 100. Quoting Christmas. Beer Advocate.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much the... it's an imperial milk stout with cinnamon, vanilla, ginger, and honey. You get all that. It tastes really boozy this year. I don't remember... Like I know the bourbon barrel aged version of that exists, and that has a strong like boozy flavor to it. But the normal one, this is just out of a can.
Maybe the brewer went off book a little bit and was like, I'm gonna add a little something to this. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am drinking from also a local brewery, also a local Richmond brewery, but has a location up in Fredericksburg. I'm drinking a little Strange Ways Wood Booger.
Oh yeah, solid.
Yeah, it's a nice little Belgian brown ale is what it is. I keep thinking it's like a porter, but no, it's a brown ale. And I always remember it's got like a little bit of a funky taste to it. It's on their funky list. But let's read it to see what we're gonna expect here. So. It's no hoax. You've spotted the elusive wood booger, Bigfoot-like creature that roams the Appalachians of Virginia. Numerous sightings of this beast have occurred over time, but your adventure is now only beginning. Examine its habits, and you'll uncover footprints of vanilla bean, coconut, sugar, and roasted malt. With small traces of dark chocolate and caramel, the beast will show you a sweet side, tempting you to let down your guard, but keep your wits about you because as quickly as it reveals itself, it vanishes. So we're going to give it a shot. Funky fresh. Yeah, it's got... I always am surprised by this beer every time I drink it because it really is like best described as funky. It's got like a weird tang to it, but like not bad, just strange. Like you start tasting it, you get the malty, almost like I said, a porter, and you get that brown ale like bitterness, for lack of a better term, and then it's just got this weird like blast of like tang, almost sour. and then goes back
Belgian,
to
right?
bitter. It's a Belgian brown ale. Yeah.
Yeah, Belgian brown ale. So I think what you're picking up is like the same kind of like tang you would get from a Blue Moon, where it's almost banana-y on the back end, but because it's a brown ale, it's like masking that. And so I feel like that's what you're talking about. At least that's what I hear.
Yeah, maybe
getting, but
that might be it. It's good though. I like it. I've always enjoyed this beer, and I continue to enjoy it. I'm glad I found it at my local Food Lion.
Nice.
But I had this was like a batch that I got way back when, like in fall, and I've just had like other things. It was like the last one that I kept on there because, like, it was summery still for so long, and I had some other things that just felt. And then it was like I want to do like the Oktoberfest and the ciders as it kind of transitioned to fall, and now it's like immediately winter, and I would have expected to have drank this long before this, but instead I'm like, oh no, pleasantly, like this is a very fitting beer for this time.
It was like 20 some degrees this morning, so yeah,
it was so cold. Yeah, it was nuts. So, all right, well, Game Awards are the week of December this episode, 8th. Right?
Yes, this week.
Yes. Okay, so
this episode drops on it's next week. This episode drops on the 28th, so it's a week from Thursday, because this Thursday, audio listeners, is the 1st of December. So
yeah, so we'll be doing a live stream of that with our reactions, and we will, which I actually need to remind myself to talk to my wife about, but it should be after the kids go to bed, so I'm not too worried about it.
It starts at 7:30.
The show or like the pre-show?
I don't know. It's just the Game Awards, December 8th, 7:30.
Then perfect. Yeah. Then I don't have to worry about it. It'll just be 2 nights in a row. What is it? It's the Thursday, right?
It is Thursday.
Thursday.
We record on Monday.
I got nothing. Yeah, I got nothing on Thursday. So cool. Well, then it will be, so we'll be doing that, and we'll probably do so next week's episode, we'll probably do sort of a quick last minute predictions run for maybe some. We already talked about Game of the Year a lot, so maybe we'll do like a rundown of other predictions. But as always, we've also got our like slate of holiday stuff planned. So I was just talking to you about wish list stuff and looking at that, updating that. It's kind of, we have to coordinate that, I feel like, so much earlier each year because we have to like then coordinate getting the presents to each other. So one of these days we'll just have to ship them. But
love the idea of Wednesday. Don't know if we can procure the gifts this fast, but meeting up on Wednesday in person.
Maybe it may have to end up being, I like it too. It may have to end up being like Friday or Saturday or something like that, like meeting you in Stanton, because
hey, I got a Merry Monkey with your name on it.
Oh, I had like a bit of an overlap problem where I had some money coming into my account, but hadn't processed with the bank yet. And I was like, and so then, Amazon has that, like, if you want it to arrive by Wednesday, you need to get it. But it's possible I could do Wednesday because I might have it shipped to my parents' house. Ooh. Go straight there and then maybe meet you in Stanton or Waynesboro or something.
Sweet. That'd be amazing.
So
I would love to
do
do that.
On the way with the kids. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my mother-in-law is off work that day and will be around to watch the children. So it would not be a burden. Alex wants to cook. My wife, she's cooking our Thanksgiving stuff on Wednesday. So
smart.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see. I'm open.
What else you got going on for Thanksgiving?
Pokemon.
People come in. Just your mother-in-law or
my brother T-Bone, friend of the show. Mm-hmm. He's coming over, and my mom and dad, and my mother-in-law who lives next door. They're all going to be here for the weekend. I think they're spending 2 nights, and we have the Boar's Head Inn, which is a resort inn place out here in Charlottesville, is having like a Christmas light show thing that I bought tickets for. And so on Black Friday evening, we're going to go do that at 6:30. We plan to put our Christmas tree up and decorate our house on Friday after Thanksgiving. But the day of is just the food. It's always centered around appetizers and cocktails and drinks and wine and then food. And then everyone hangs out afterwards. So
nice. Yeah, we're doing a My Family thing for our rotation right now is to do. We had rotated for a while, and there was a while I wanted to get off like doing the rotation at all and just having whoever wants to, like, orienting the holidays around us and the kids.
Yeah, it's so much easier for people to come to you.
Yeah,
when you have little children.
Long term, I think I still want to do that, but because of the pandemic, I'm now now the kids are like able to travel. Gavin's not getting car sick as much anymore. I'm like, all right, let's do that. Let's go see. Let's go.
There are pros and cons to going somewhere. When you go somewhere, you're not hosting. You don't have to worry about the cleanup.
Oh, absolutely.
You just show up and kind of help, and then you go home. Whereas hosting, it's like, do we have blankets? Do we have places to sleep for everyone? Yeah. You kind of have to, disorient your household routine for a couple of days, and so
Yep.
But then you're traveling with little children, which is
we are traveling with little children. Either way, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So Thanksgiving and gift exchanges, preparing for Christmas and all the holiday stuff is our favorite thing. But
80-Bit Pods mentions our favorite thing.
80-Bit Pods mentions our favorite thing. Favorite things.
It's a little segment of our show where we talk about something that we're digging this week. Something as shallow as a food item, or as meaningful and deep as a heart-to-heart with someone you got in an argument with. I don't know, like whatever spectrum you would like. The idea here is to come up with something that might inspire you. Maybe you'll have something you can enjoy vicariously through us, what have you. Doesn't really have a goal like that. But my favorite thing is by far blowing everything else out of the water like a crater hitting water is Pokemon Scarlet. Oh my gosh. So my journey with this game, waking up to the review embargo lifting, devastated, sad. Like for other reasons in my life, I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning and I was already anxious about, there's some water things happening in my basement. So like that's what actually kept me awake. But in the back, I was just so bummed that Pokemon Violet and Scarlet were like the cyberpunk of Nintendo Pokemon Company Game Freak going on. And like this game is just ridden with bugs and technical problems, and people are review bombing it and everyone is blowing it up on Twitter. And I was just so bummed at this game. So I'm like, I have it pre-ordered. It comes out that day. I'm going to get it. Like I got to have the collection, right? I've got every entry in all of the Pokemon generations. This one I'm not going to skip. I've made plans, like got to get it. Whatever. So I get the game and I'm fully expecting all the bugs. Of course, I run into the same hilarious things that like everyone on the internet is running into, but I've noticed the difference between Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Cyberpunk was like Cyberpunk had egregious bugs where like NPCs wouldn't spawn, so you couldn't finish quests. Like doors wouldn't open, so you couldn't get into the spaces to do quests. Like game would crash and you would lose progress, or the quest wouldn't restart correctly after you recover from the crash. And it crashed all the time. And that's extremely frustrating. The bugs in Pokemon Scarlet do absolutely nothing to interrupt your gameplay. Like you don't lose any progress. Nothing inhibits you. It doesn't slow you down. Nothing. Like you don't lose progress. It's so like the bones of the game are solid, like rock solid. Geodude solid. Onyx solid. And so,
yeah, we get it.
I had to use
literally don't have to go through all the rock Pokemon.
No,
and ground Pokemon and steel Pokemon.
No, whoa. All right, now you're challenging me here. So I found myself just like playing it and enjoying it, and then continuing to play it and enjoy it, and then continuing, and like now I'm almost 15 hours in after 4 days, which is insane for me. That's way more game time. Granted, Pokemon is a kid-friendly game, and I have a copy of Violet that I've given to my 7-year-old, and he's playing it alongside of me. So we're playing it kind of together, and like we're having a good time, which that is why this is my favorite thing. Because it's taken over our household. We're thoroughly enjoying. He's old enough to read. He gets what's going on. He's asking all these questions. I'm helping him through the game. We're having a blast. And just the gameplay design, what they've done to mix up the formula with the big 3 objectives that you can do across the whole open world. And it's open world. You can go in any order. I think it's just a breath of fresh air for Pokemon. And I absolutely love it. I'm not going to go into a full review here because I could. But just it caught me off guard. Because I was really, really bummed and sad and devastated by all of the technical bugs. And so I think there's almost like enough content to talk about the reasons what happened, why it's ridden with bugs, the review scores, and how good the game is, all in like a full... We could do a whole episode about it. I'm kind of bummed that you haven't played it.
I don't want to play it.
It's so fascinating because there's so many insights from the industry. And like,
I mean, it's fair that that's not to say that if you know, for people out there who do dislike the game because of its visual appearance bugs, right? Like that's still valid. There's still no reason, right? It takes you out of the experience, and the Game Freak is already highly criticized for their lack of ambition with visual fidelity compared to Nintendo's other studios pushing the boundaries of what the Switch is capable of with Zelda, Bayonetta, Mario. They're all beautiful games. So it's certainly still a highly valid criticism to say, what the heck, guys, get it together.
Yeah,
this game
right?
should not have released.
And
So
that's why it could be a full topic of discussion for a full episode.
No, I'm but as far as I'm concerned, I burned out on Pokemon right now. Like Arceus, I loved Arceus and still was like, okay, I'm Pokemoned out. Tried multiple times, tried to kind of drag myself back into the game and was like, I'm Pokemoned out. Maybe it's because I did too much Pokemon Go last year with Gavin. I don't know, but I'm just like, like the repetitiveness of the formula of like, catch the Pokemon, level the Pokemon up, catch more Pokemon, level those Pokemon up, catch more Pokemon, trade some Pokemon. Oh, you can't get all the Pokemon. Looks like you're gonna need to trade. Is like, okay, just a little bit like, and I'm sure they do new and innovative things, but like hearing about the state at which the game came out, I was like, great, I don't have to care about this game now. So I don't.
Please,
and it's
please
good because my favorite thing is God of War, which is amazing and wonderful, so polished. Haven't run into a single bug yet. Nope. Love it. Amazing. Crazy, incredible story. Wonderful follow-up sequel. If it beats Elden Ring, it's a well-deserved victory over another incredible game. That's just how good the game is. That's how good both games are. Is if either game beats the other, it's not a knock against the other, in my opinion. It is then the game deserves it because goodness gracious, I had my my previous criticisms I think of the game even before I played it sort of stand right, like where I had mentioned that like it doesn't really reinvent the wheel, it doesn't really do anything new. It is really just a continuation. It feels like just sort of where the story left off, right? Like everything down to there are and it certainly doesn't utilize the PS5 hardware as much as it could, but then again, neither did Elden Ring, right? Because both of them were cross-generational, right? Elden Ring, PS4? Yeah. It was. Okay, great. That's what I thought. I thought so. And in my mind, I started
everything about my life, but I'm assuming
I'm doubting it too. I think it is. I think it was. Yeah. So either way, that's So that criticism still stands. And I have my own beef with some choices they made with the combat design, but it's a minor thing. Everything else has been wonderful, and it's exactly what I expected to finish the story. And it's so much longer than I thought it was. I'm like 30 hours into the game, and I'm 11 out of 18 chapters. I just checked today, and I was like, so I will not be finishing this before leaving for Thanksgiving. Great. I was just complaining to you about it. So
wow, you put in some time. I'm 20 hours in.
I did,
and I think you're a full like good story beat ahead of me, right? Like one good
story
chunk
beats. Yeah,
no, several.
Couple.
Oh, okay.
Well, not several, a couple.
Okay.
I've plugged in some time. I've been able to plug in some time with like oh gosh, what was I? It's funny because I've been playing
Bloodstained.
I've been playing Bloodstained on PS5 in order to. That's just so I can turn my brain off and listen to the Deuce Sanderson book.
Oh, nice.
But I've also, it's like I haven't cut really back that much on D&D. I've still been involved as a player in several games, and then been planning my sessions and getting time in my DMing as well. Like I have not gotten behind on anything. In fact, if anything, I'm ahead significantly. So I don't really know where the time came from, I guess. But it's I'm plugging along. I'm just plugging away. So I
lost some game time because I had the kids home and Pokemon.
Yep.
I can't play God of War with the kids around. So it's been good.
Well, cool. I feel like this is a good catch up, and there's a lot. This is there's a fire hose of entertainment right now. So I feel like in honor of that, sorry DLC fans, I think we're gonna have to skip DLC today, but we'll just go bam, 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 and pour one out for DLC. Oh crap! I poured it on my keyboard.
Oh no! Not literally poured out. Don't do that.
No. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. This is good stuff. So, no, I just think that it was worth talking about Game Awards. It was worth talking about Thanksgiving, but then also it's just both of us have video games as our favorite thing. It's because right now, fire hose of entertainment, and this is saying something because again, Brandon Sanderson books are a big deal in my life, and so God of War overtaking that for me is a really big deal. So, but I guarantee you, Mistborn 7 will show up as a favorite thing in like a week or two when I finish it. So, all right. Well, if we're gonna skip favorite DLC, then let's move on to our main topic, which is indie, AA, and everything in between, is what I labeled it. Or alternative title for you: when indies are no longer indies.
Yes.
So let's start, and we're not going to presume that people know what we're talking about, or we're not going to even presume that people listen to our episode that we did on independent games and independent developers a long time ago. This is similar to that episode, but slightly more nuanced. but we'll still start with sort of some of the basics. What is an indie developer? What's an AA? What's a AAA? And what distinguishes these categories? Take it away.
Yes, I will. Video game history walkthrough with Termite. Let's go. Back in 2012, there's a lovely article on Eurogamer.net about answering this exact question. What is indie? And wonderfully written article by Fred Dutton compares the early 90s definition of the indie music going under a transformation. What started as a tag for any act that released music without the help of a major record label became a way of describing and selling a sound and a lifestyle. Once it was all about crudely recorded cassette tapes, direct intimate fan interaction. Today, it's Coldplay with the corporate fixings. That's what happened in the 90s. 2012 was when the article was written, so not literally today, Coldplay. What I wanted to do there was highlight the change that happened in the music industry, because the same thing happened in the gaming industry. And right around 2012, the advent of PS4 and Xbox One on the horizon, this is when 360, the PlayStation Network, PS3 were thriving with games like Super Meat Boy. Minecraft was indie with Mojang. But then there were games like Journey that were also touted as indie, and they're very different. So video games were going through the similar transformation. It was originally a small team, not published or influenced by a big corporate publisher, creating a video game from their own ambition and passion, desire, and creativity, but then kind of morphed into like what became stylized like in indie with like the release of Journey, which is a Sony published game and Sony funded studio. Right. That game studio, I believe, is what that game company, all one word, that game company made Journey.
Didn't they like go on to like form Annapurna? Like, isn't Annapurna involved, or is that Sony's?
So Annapurna is like an indie publisher, which is a great thank you for bringing that up, because they're a publisher, which by definition would say is nothing they do is indie, because an indie by definition is like not furnished by a publishing company. There's no label here, but you do now have indie publishers, because indie has morphed what was once kind of a financial definition into more of a stylistic definition of what makes, like Microsoft is funding all kinds of games now with their ID at Microsoft. Like EA is a way out from Jose Ferris, and It Takes Two are like games that were funded by EA through their like indie funding service, if you will. And so now it's more of a style, kind of like music today. If you look up indie music, it's probably going to be an acoustic, folky kind of, like a Mumford and Sons type, like accoutrements or whatever. So it's really hard to nail this down. It's exactly why we're here right now. Right. So there's two definitions here, and one is the literal definition, which is like not funded by a company, an individual or a small group that is not owned by a company that makes games. An indie game is a game made by an indie developer. Simple as that. That's one definition. Yeah. Right. And then the other one, I don't
like that definition because it doesn't suit anybody, right?
Right. Like no one's doing that anymore.
Because hey, guess what?
Some people are, but
Activision. Does that mean Activision games that are published like from Activision are right? Because Activision is also a publisher. So are those indie games? Is like Gearbox is a publishing wing now? Are they like what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything, right? So
it's hard. It's hard. Yep. So I think, according to this Eurogamer article, there's a really good definition. An indie game is just a game where the game makers didn't have to make compromises for anybody. They put their audience work and ego first, and they made something interesting and meaningful, and the audience can see the kind of personal touch of an auteur in there, whatever that might mean for games.
I think say that is that's closer. I would combine the two. I would sort of say it exists somewhere in that space where it's like, because you could say that same thing about Death Stranding, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Kojima,
right? Like you could absolutely say that.
Productions.
But I would not say that Death Stranding is an indie, right? So that's why it's hard to nail down. And that's why, again, that's why we're here. Like indie, to me, if I had to sort of tweak it and make it a Penguin definition, I'd say an indie game kind of has both qualities, like both and. It is both untethered to a publisher, unfunded by I would say it is not funded in any way by a publicly traded company, right? Like it's a privately owned studio, privately funded, like, right? Like that means that like they either got Kickstarter or like, right, or donations or whatever, or they got the capital themselves, right? Venture capital. themselves, and then they also and yes, it also includes they don't answer to anybody. They're not trying to and even possibly self-published, which I guess is, again, self-published would be the route to go, but like I feel like there's even middle ground there where like some independent developers will then like try to pitch their games to publishers to then back and publish through, whereas like I think of indie movement, I think of like they drop it on Steam and right, like they drop in a public thing where it's where, you know, and Steam being the example, yes, even though Steam is a publisher, like in a way, but it's right. Valve is the publisher, right? But for Steam, they have their whole Greenlight program where it's like this is supposed to be actually an indie space where we're a lot less. We're not trying to curate something. We are trying to create a space where creatives can just put their work out there and let it flourish. So it is meant to be that. So in my mind, it's like they got nothing but like they're making it in their garage or they're making it in their basement. They got a little bit of money backed. You know, maybe it's their own savings or maybe it's crowdfunded, but they're just making the work and dumping it on Steam. To me, that's indie. I know there are different levels, but to me, like that's kind of what the spirit of it is, while still acknowledging that, like, you know, Ninja Theory for a time was an independent developer, and when they made Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, that was an indie game, right? Like I would still be willing to assent to that. So, and I would still be willing to assent to that. Like Minecraft is
definitely
was
definitely indie
until purchased by Microsoft. It was definitely indie, even for as big as it was. So.
So it was like PUBG and those things.
Absolutely.
The very last paragraph of this Eurogamer article that I have to link off in the show notes. I know I always forget to do that, but this time I have to do that. But it says, it might not be the easiest answer, but it perhaps the most satisfactory. While the term indie implicitly suggests that it's all about financial status, most gamers would agree that the indie scene is actually defined by its fierce creative spirit and contempt for corporate meddling. That's contempt for corporate meddling. Like that's key,
contempt,
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe it's time to retire the word from our vocabulary. As you said, it's meaningless. The games are starting to outgrow it. Definitely. They're becoming bigger, better, and with traditional top-down publisher model showing signs of chronic decay, potentially much more important. And this was written 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so here we are 10 years later, like
still
the traditional top-down publisher model showing signs of chronic decay. What have we seen in the last 10 years with the traditional top-down publisher model? Consolidation. That's all we've seen.
Consolidation.
So absolutely chronic decay. And what's much more important, the indie movement. Like we have now Devolver Digital, we have Annapurna, we have Humble Games, we have Team 17. I mean, there's just publisher after publisher after publisher that's funding these indie games that we all know and love, and they're taking over. Like, look at Game Pass. There's so many options available to you that are just right off, like, for free. It's great. And like you said, Steam, the curation's getting better. Even PlayStation is like taking a stance to like change its PlayStation storefront so that the cheap platinum easy games that are $1 or $2 are like not as easy to find. They're gonna like refine that and get games that are notable up top. And it's working. And even the eShop, look at Nintendo, and they've expanded their third-party wing so much. Like the eShop, there's almost everything on Switch, and the indie movement's perfect for Nintendo because there's a whole like showcase that the Nindies turned into the Nintendo Indie Showcase, but like there's a whole like presentation that Nintendo brings under their arm and presents under their wing. It's all indie games, so it's extremely important. And the quality of games under the indie not like moniker have gotten exponentially better in 10 years. I used to write off indies as a gamer. I was like, oh, it's an indie game. I don't care. Now I'm like,
now it's like, oh, that looks awesome. Good. Yep. That's worth looking into. Right. And there's still absolutely an aspect of the cream rising to the top.
Sure.
That is important to acknowledge. But yeah, no, it's definitely a bigger space. But I mean, man, you mentioned the whole idea of like indies should change the nomenclature or whatever. I'm like, man, if I had any power over freaking gamers changing their terminology, then we would all be in a lot better space all around. Why? Because number one, even the term video games is a misnomer in my opinion.
Right.
But we have so many like relics in our language that I think hold us back from serious consideration as an art form.
Yep.
But
I agree.
And again, not the least of which being video games, but also, you know, there's just certain genres that I've harped on needing to be renamed entirely.
Yeah.
But yes, indie is definitely falls in that list of like, it doesn't. I mean, heck, even AA, AAA, like can we just find a better, like, there's got to be better language out there, right? Like published, self-published,
something. Right?
Right? Like, I mean, published, self-published, you know, Steam blasted, whatever. Like, I don't know. There's got to be something out there that we can use. Indie doesn't work anymore though, so let's abolish it. So I would even be okay with A, AA, AAA, right? Like if we have to stick to that, then like yeah, A, AA, AAA, right? A being like this is what we call indie, right? This is like bare bones groundwork stuff,
Low
right?
budget,
Self-funded, kickstarted,
Yep.
right? And then AA is just in that between space. That would throw your Annapurnas, your Devolver Digitals in that space where it's like this is sort of maybe not those, but like that would throw your
No, I think so. I think you're right.
yeah, okay, right.
Mhm.
And then AAA would be your big thing, but yeah. So just sort of again, just to be clear here, you know, we talked a lot about what indie is and what it isn't. Let's sort of talk about what then distinguishes indies from AA's and AAA's. I mean, AAA is, and now we're reaching that level where people are talking about adding another A to this and doing quadruple A's, right?
Gosh.
Like,
yeah,
and those are your Calls of Duty, your massive like successes.
I think the quad A is like mostly Sony exclusives. Like the quad A is God of War Ragnarok, like the crazy next level, like big, huge budgets. But like
yeah. No,
Destiny
that's
2
true.
would have fallen into that.
Does Call of Duty not have a huge budget though?
It does.
I feel like they have a huge budget.
I think you're wrong. I'm not correcting you. It was just an
I don't
extra
think they
clarification
use
of,
that budget to actually improve the game. I think what they do is they use that budget on servers and stuff to deal with the load that their game is inevitably going to get. That's I imagine, but that's still it's a huge budget. It's a huge undertaking. It's just like massive. It's just So I mean, and some of these AA, AAA, Quad A, you could even distinguish by just that very fact, the budget. But definitely for the AAA and if you want to use Quad A space, those are definitely developed. Like these are developers under massive publishers with just like these are we're talking multi-international corporations that are just throwing money around. Because they have money and they get so much money. And these are your popular games. These are your headliners. These are your Christmas wish lists that people have. And then AA is that weird in-between space. And I really love the AA space. I think the AA space is cool because it's the smaller developers that might be owned by the big guys, but they're putting out they're putting out experiences that really exist in that liminal space where it's like, yes, they have to answer to people and yes, they have something to prove. But we're still seeing some really cool stuff come out of that AA space. I would say like the Darksiders franchise, for example, that's owned by Embracer Group now, I guess, but THQ Nordic.
Yeah, Embracer bought so much stuff.
They're not super huge sellers, but they're really cool and meaningful games to me. They may be a little derivative, but they're still, every time one comes out, I'm excited because it's a great game that exists in a cool space. So yeah, I really feel like the AA space is just a really cool thing. So.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, there's great comparison article from Gameopedia that I found that compares indie, AAA, AA games, and you wanted to talk about like what the difference is, right? Is that what we're answering? Mm-hmm. Like
that's kind of what we're answering.
Kind of how is different?
Nope, you're right. That is exactly what we're answering.
Okay, yeah. So how is it different from AAA studio or a AA studio? Like, what is the difference here? And there's a breakdown: budget, marketing push, team size, dedicated publisher, graphics technology, production values, franchising, threshold for success, streaming content, esports. Notable examples are in this list on Gameopedia of what distinguishes them. But I'm just going to highlight a couple of things here because it would take way too long all night to like go through this bit by bit. But like development budget's probably the biggest, I think, and that's why it's at the top here. But the costs for AA variable a lot, like lying between
like
indie and AAA.
I mean, I guess it's a bigger variation, except for just the never-ending scale that is AAA, right?
Right. So, yeah, AAA is never-ending. It's just like
it's just
hundreds of millions of dollars or higher. Yeah,
it's this much plus, right? Yep. Number plus is the AAA space. So yeah, I guess it has the biggest range technically because it goes on till infinity until we create a cap on it with the.
It's true. Yeah,
so we officially do that with Quad A.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, as far as like the indie space has a much smaller budget range, I imagine. In the AA space.
But like around £4 million is what this says. It's like that was the budget for Life is Strange. And that's
what's a pound? What kind of crazy fantasy money are you talking about? That sounds like something out of some Chronicles of Narnia book there.
Is that the I think it's a pound. I don't know what that little symbol is, but I think this is
is that like, it does look like an L?
No, it looks like the letter C with two crosses through it. Or like not vertical, but horizontal.
Yeah.
The C with two horizontal marks.
Oh yeah, that's it. Euros. I think that's a euro.
But a euro is like a weird curly E, I thought. Or like an F. I don't know.
I'm curious now. Euro money
Click on the link
symbol.
That I sent
I just want to Google it. Nope. That's it. It's a C. It's a C. It looked like a C with Because if you put 2 dashes through a E.
Yep, that's it. You got it. Yep, that's euro. So I was right. Sweet. 4 million euros. Yeah.
No, you said pounds. A pound is
my
not
bad.
a euro.
I'm dumb. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know European monies. Lo siento.
Yeah, it's an L. L for is a little kind
I got
of
you. Oh,
L
yeah. That's what
I'm sorry.
Okay.
If we ever have, if by this point we have international listeners that we haven't driven away, I apologize for messing up your money symbols so badly. We're very self-centered.
This is like complete epitome of American ignorance.
Although, to be fair, I have not been wrong once.
That's true.
I may have misrepresented what the symbol looks like, but I haven't been wrong. So.
That's true. Yeah. I straight up said the wrong word. So anyway, the budget for Life is Strange is around 4 million euros. And then so marketing push, not as much as AAA. Team size, I want to talk about that. Detailed data is not exactly available, but games like Life is Strange, whose team grew to a size of about 40. Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice had a team of 20. PUBG, 35. But it grew to like below 50. So somewhere between 35 and 50. Dedicated publishers. AA development studio will typically be backed by a publisher, but not fundamentally part of that publisher, and thus have somewhat more freedom to innovate and experiment compared to AAA. And then graphics and technology. AA games usually prioritize excellent gameplay and storytelling or innovative mechanics. However, their graphical and technical quality is not certainly high quality, if not cutting edge. And I want to add my own termite spin on graphics and technology. I feel like a lot of AA games utilize an engine that exists that you can license, like Unity or Unreal Engine. There's an easy way for development to kind of get kickstarted quickly to like not design your own engine. Where like indie development, while way smaller and way lower budget, a lot of indie games that are truly indie will sometimes develop their own engines, like small. Mm-hmm. So like Stardew Valley, one person, Undertale, one person, and they developed everything from scratch all by themselves. But I know that the licensing of engines has grown and evolved, and like indie is now using totally using licensing and getting engines, especially when you have the Nintendo, EA, and everyone funding indie titles. So like that's kind of big gray area, but generally the AA studios are not developing their own engines, and that's why they're AA. Is they're given an engine. So I would even consider Death Stranding using the Decima engine is an example of what I'm talking about, but not necessarily a AA game. So it's a bad. It's a
I think of like,
give me something.
I mean,
so
many, like there's a lot of Souls likes, right? So I think of like Remnant, Greedfall,
yeah,
which isn't Souls like, but Remnant.
I thought Greedfall was
Mortal Shell. No, Greedfall's like a BioWare like Greedfall is meant to be like Dragon Age. Yeah, it's often compared to Dragon Age. Yeah. But all of them, they use things like Unreal, right? Or Unity. Yeah. Like you always see that showing up. I think even Gearbox uses Unreal, or at least they used Unreal for many of the Borderlands games. So yeah. And I would say Gearbox is in that weird space, but they're close. They're close to like a AA.
Well, 2K is the same publisher for Rockstar. So like
forgot
they're
about that.
Definitely
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah. 2K is one of the richest publishers around. Production values. AA games fall in the middle. They're expected to have good production values, but often character models and voice actors feature people who aren't very famous. Plague Tale: Innocence, which is the first game in the series of the new one that just came out, went to the extent of developing their own proprietary engine and putting extensive detail into textures and lighting. So that flies against what I was talking about with licensing engines. I guess this studio did that, and
good for them. They've been Requiem is like possibly top of my list. And actually, shoot, no, you know what? I didn't add it to my list for you, and the reason why is because I guess I forgot to click the button. Amazon now has a button that says "Don't spoil this for me" if someone buys this.
Yeah,
and I guess I never opted into that. Okay. Because I went to click on my main wish list today. I went to click on it to add it to another list, the one that I was going to send you, and it said. Someone may have already bought this for you. I was like, sweet, awesome. I'll get that for Christmas.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So I know I'm getting Requiem, which is exciting.
Nice. Yeah.
So I always like to try to grab as many of the game nominations as possible, like the Game Award nominations. So like Psychonauts, I added on there because it was Psychonauts 2. I put on my list for you, and it's exclusively because it was nominated last year. It didn't win, but even the nominees I like to add to my list.
Sure.
So Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was nominated this year. Had no interest in it before, but it showed up on the nomination list. So I'm like, okay, well, this must be good. So
yeah,
I put it on there.
Oh, noted. I like this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's all. I'm just gonna. The article goes on Gameopedia. The website. Just Google like indie AAA AA games comparison, and you'll find it. If I don't link off to it, but yeah, I think we've described what AA is. I think we've met that box here. So indie is different from AA studios, mostly in team size and funding and graphics and presentation.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to mostly you to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the question then. What would you say is the point? So, again, acknowledging then that indie is hard to pin down in the first place. What then would you say? This is more of a personal thing. This is not, because there's no possible way I think to definitively, objectively answer this question. What do you think the point is at which an indie developer could or should no longer be considered an indie developer? Like, is it just simply a money point? Is it a technology point? Is it an association with a publisher? What is that to you?
Yeah, it's very difficult to articulate, but looking at the difference between Unpacked, Valhalla, those are like some indie games that I've enjoyed and gotten platinums in, and then looking at, say, Divinity Original Sin, Greedfall, Kingdom Come Deliverance, A Way Out, It Takes
Remnant. I'm still Remnant.
Plague Tale Innocence and its sequel, like Sifu, those are all AA, and I don't know what it is about, but when I watch a trailer, like when I see the trailer and I experience what I'm seeing, it's kind of a gut check. It's just like, this is an indie game, likely. And then like you'll see, and maybe you're corrected and you're wrong, or you're not. And then like, this is a AA game.
Well, and it's getting harder to tell because they're getting so much better. Like I remember seeing trailers for Evil West, which comes out tomorrow, the time we're recording this. And remember seeing trailers for that during either a Game Awards or a E3-ish thing. Doesn't matter. I remember seeing trailers and being like, wow, who's developing that? And then seeing the publisher or the developer, and I'm like, well, okay, all right. And the publisher too. And you're like, okay, yeah, so this indie, wow, it looked like it's AAA, right? So there's definitely it's getting harder to tell because the quality, as you mentioned, is getting much.
And the publisher of the game Evil West is Focus Entertainment, which makes a ton of stuff. They're definitely an umbrella company, and so I would like an Annapurna Contemporary. That's like that level of AA kind of quality to it. So they feel like indies. They might have studio. We go back to our initial definition where it's like full creative vision, no oversight as far as like money, influence, power. It's just like this studio gets to make the game they want, and Focus Entertainment is the publishing entity that's funding them, and they get to do it. So it's both indie and it's kind of AA, and there's this blurry line. And you're right. Like you watch the trailer. I just looked up what Evil West was today, and I've seen the trailer before. It just didn't click until now what it was. And so I would not label that as indie. I would be like, it's AA. Like The Pathless, is a launch title for PS5. Something I've platinumed recently. Annapurna published that one, and I would say that's AA. Yeah.
Yeah,
so I mean... So what do you think? Like what...
It's what's hard, because I'm like, there are so many games that like specifically go for the like downgraded look in the indie space, and many of them I wouldn't call indie, and many of them I wouldn't call indie. Many of them I would. I would call Hades indie.
Yeah,
but am I calling it indie because of the way it looks, or am I calling it indie because of the actual categories I have for indie? Right, like, and some of that means research, of course, which I'm not pulling out of the top of my head right now. But I mean, to me, it is that. I guess to me, as much as we're doing an entire topic on it, it doesn't really matter too much, right? Like, I guess I know when it's not AAA. Like, I feel like I know when it's not AAA, and that to me matters a little bit more, because when I do find a game in either the AA or indie space that I like, I don't really care who backed it. Most of the time, I liked it because it's doing something different, or it's doing something really well that maybe hasn't been done in a while, right? Like, there's a whole slew, a litany of games out there that occupy genre spaces that are like dying or disappearing, or like maybe one major AAA title kind of still does that, but no one else competes in that space anymore. So like seeing then something come up where it's like, word. And I mean, quite frankly, that's where a lot of the Souls-like games exist, is in that AA or indie space, because so few people compete at the AAA level that From Software does. And From Software too is a weird outlier because they're owned by Kadokawa group or whatever, but they're also able to kind of do their own thing. It's very interesting. But my point, I bring that up only because I'm like, yeah, there's like a lot of the AAA developers who used to do Souls-likes are now moving their Souls-like experiences towards something closer to like God of War, where it's got that inspired Souls-inspired combat, but it's definitely not a Souls-like, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, it's weird. And I would say for certain though, a indie develop, like, again, whether or not they to me, it's like it doesn't matter so much to me when they stop becoming indie, become AA instead. To me, then that jump is more obviously they stop becoming indie for sure when they are adequately to be described as AAA. And the example I have for this is Housemarque, right? Literally did the jump overnight. I mean, between titles, right? Like, it was like the last game they released before Returnal. Gosh, Remnant, Reversal, Returnal. Returnal. The last game they released before Returnal, I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I remember looking at it and being like, yeah, very indie.
Next Machina.
Yeah, exactly. Like, very, very much falls into my like definition of indie. And then Returnal is like, oh my gosh, this is so totally AAA, but it's that nice kind of AAA where it's like this developer is still doing something fresh, but now it looks fresh too, right? Like, it looks fresh in the way a AAA game looks. But still, nevertheless, like, I also now going forward, no way. Housemarque is Sony-backed exclusive studio, right?
Yeah.
A similar thing kind of happened with Ninja Theory, except Ninja Theory kind of like was like AAA, then down to indie, or at least AA, then down to indie, and then back to double/AAA. Like, I mean, I really feel like the amount of money Microsoft's throwing at and like time they're giving Senua's Saga, like, I want that. I think they're trying to make that a headliner in some way, shape, or form.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a Game Pass subscriber pusher. Like,
so it's gonna be so it's totally like, I mean, to me speaks very much of like, this is now they consider this a AAA, and it probably has a AAA budget. I'm shocked it's taking so long. I mean, that was supposed to be a launch title.
Yeah.
2 years over 2 years.
But
what's going on with
that
it
right
game?
You know,
make it right. I do agree, but I also really want to know what's going on with that game. So.
Interestingly enough about Housemarque, because when you said it, I looked it up real quick just to see what they've done, their pedigree. They took money from Activision for a game called Golf Tee It Up in 2008. Okay. And then they took money from Ubisoft to make a game called Outland. So they took money from Activision, from Ubisoft, from Sony, and then again from Activision for an Angry Birds trilogy console port. Wow. And then like went exclusively for Sony for Resogun, Alienation, Nex Machina, a game called Matterfall, and then Returnal. So like it was an interesting road for them to have like totally. You're right. Like to me, that's an independent studio. We're gonna work with Activision. Nope. Next Ubisoft. Nope. Next Sony. Like,
but that's so rotating through. It is. No, it is. But like by that measure, though, you have to then what is From Software? Because like if you look at From Software's publishers too, I mean, other than obviously Kadokawa, but there's also like they get a significant investment with Bandai Namco. They did Sekiro with Activision. They did Bloodborne with Sony. Demon's Souls with Sony.
Exactly the same trajectory.
It's like, what? I mean, and like, so it's so hard because they operate with a level of independence that is also not seen very much anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, it used to be that way, right? Like, I feel like the 2000s, it was the Wild West of that. Like, it was more developers were that than like locked in and owned by a publisher, whether that was EA or Activision. Cool. Well, let's move on to our next question. Try to consolidate some of these possibly. Let's talk about why do big publishers end up investing in indie developers, and how is this different from how is that nuanced a little different from a AA studio or a full-blown acquisition where they're acquiring a studio like Housemarque was acquired and sort of converted into a AAA. So like, but what's the point? Why even do it in the first place? Like, if you're not publishing their games, why invest in them? Like, why is that a thing?
You mean like why would a publisher not
exactly,
or why would a publisher give
invest,
a company money
but not acquire? Right?
Exactly.
Yes, invest in the form of
not acquire. Yeah. So creative freedom and the quality of indie titles has evolved. It has gotten infinitely better since the early aughts through the early 2010s into. A couple of things happened. The consoles matter. A lot of folks are like, indie titles, PC, I get it. Steam, crazy good for the PC landscape. But consoles sell gangbusters. If you combine the entire market share of all the consoles, most indie titles are third party. You're going to get a Switch, you're going to get an Xbox, you're going to get PlayStation, like they're everywhere. Look at a publishing company and say, I'm going to fund this studio a minuscule amount of money compared to a AAA game. So like Ubisoft, for example, to make a Tom Clancy game, like crazy amount of money. To make an Assassin's Creed game, crazy money, right? But I'm going to fund this tiny little offshoot company over here to create this indie. I'm going to give them complete creative freedom, and it's going to be tiny, like pennies on the dollar. It's all about money. It's all about a business, right? So publishers are looking at the quality of these creative studios and what they're able to do with the advancements of technology. The consoles are now parity minus the Switch, but as far as the architecture of the consoles themselves, PS3 and Xbox 360 were miles apart. Now the PS5, the Xbox Series consoles, they're all x86 architecture, just like PCs. So the publisher doesn't have to spend a ton of money on getting a console port. Now it's development studio, make a game, and it can go everywhere, except the Switch, which uses the ARM architecture. It's slightly different, but it's not awful. So they can port the same game across every platform and reach a huge market share. So you're getting, basically what I'm saying is a long-winded way of saying very low risk, that is low money, doesn't cost a whole lot, very high reward. If this studio makes something amazing, looking at you, EA, who funded Jose Ferreira to make It Takes Two, that went on to win Game of the Year awards and crazy money. EA made gangbusters on that game because the return on their investment was huge. The game sold really, really well, and it won Game of the Year. So it's all about making money. It's all about lowering the risk, lowering the cost, and getting a good quality product. But the reason why this is even happening is because of what's going on in the hardware space with the architectures lining up and the parity between console and PC being smaller than it ever was. And, sorry, the last bit, the development tools, the testing tools, the game engines themselves being open source, being able to license them all. It's all creating this huge, like massive, what's the zeitgeist of like game development in general is just all kind of becoming ubiquitous and easier barrier of entry, and there's just so much more talent able to make stuff now. The barrier of entry is so low, you're getting the best creatives we've ever gotten in the indie space ever from the streets. Just like you don't need to have your chops. Like people don't need to have degrees. You don't have to go through as much education. You can just get in and start making stuff. And I think that's showing through all of that. So it's multifaceted. It's all coming together, and we're seeing low risk and high reward. Boom.
Yeah, I think there's also the other piece that I would say, why do publishers do this, is because Sony changed the game a decade ago and made it so that acquiring talented studios was sort of a way, and then having a slate of exclusives, right? And now we're seeing sort of like the scary monster version of that, where Microsoft's like, we're gonna throw our massive Azure money around to now acquire. We're not just acquiring indie studios, we're acquiring the big dogs. But like for the last 10 years, not exclusively this, but it's very much been like we're grabbing independent developers, right? Like that is where our talent pool is coming from. So now, look at Minecraft, right? Like Xbox was like,
Mojang.
Microsoft's like, they're like, Mojang was independent. They created a global sensation, like one of the best, not best, but one of the highest
grossing games of all time.
Same with League of Legends, right? I'm pretty sure Riot, if not Riot itself as an entity, the people who are modding Dota, right? Like and modding Warcraft 3 to make Dota from the map editor, those guys were independent, like, right? That grew out of an independent development space.
Yep.
Nevertheless, right? So yeah. I mean, that's where they're essentially scouting talent out of the indie space. So it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, not only are you going to potentially get a huge return on your investment from the thing itself, you're also creating ties and connections with those developers so that they turn to you when they're like, hey, I think we're ready to go big. And once they've sort of proven themselves, then it's sort of like a bidding war, who can grab them.
Yeah, and then when
they're going to look more favorably on the person who invested in them in the first place.
They do. You look at Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, they're all looking for extremely good talent that they can market as an exclusive. So like a studio like Double Fine Productions, making Psychonauts 2, like Microsoft acquired them now. Tim Schafer's studio, like he's now under their wing. So Microsoft is going to use his talent and that studio's talent to create Microsoft exclusive things only available on Game Pass. And like Shuhei Yoshida, over on PlayStation is the head of the indie title. So Housemarque, acquiring Housemarque and getting an exclusive deal. Like, let's make PlayStation games because we want to sell PlayStations. And so that's also a benefit of the consolidation and acquiring the studios, is like locking down good talent to sell your platform and to like get players, increase the market share for you. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's skip the middle question because I feel like we've sort of we'll just be spinning the wheels there. Let's just ask, do you think there are any downsides to this practice? This idea of big publishers, big money, multinational, international corporations, like coming in, publicly traded organizations coming in and just being like, we're now going to meddle in this space, right? Because the independent movement, just like in music, was supposed to be a grassroots thing, was supposed to be, by the people for the people, and now it's by the corporate overlords for the corporate overlords. And we've seen the negative impact on the music industry, right? So like you drew that comparison before, an apt comparison. Do you think it's a similar effect is happening here, or do you think that for the most part it's just increased are we getting better games or not? I think is what it boils down to. So or are we getting better games, but are they coming at the cost of blank, right? Like I guess that would be the other side of the coin. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like the conversation about unionization and like how corporate overlords like treat employees aside. We need to talk about that. That's a big thing. It's a huge drawback. Is that big corporate overlords come in, they acquire an indie development studio, and all of a sudden they're like second-class citizens, or they're not treated as well, or there's not enough diversity, and there's no parity amongst those folks versus the bigger. That all is terrible, and I don't want to gloss over that, but that's also not the topic of this discussion.
Of course.
So I want to say that.
Well, kind of. It was, what are the downsides? Like that.
That is a huge downside.
It was a huge downside.
Yeah,
that's included.
Absolutely.
And that's like to be talked about first and foremost is the quality of life.
The humanity of individuals that are hands on the keyboard, that are making stuff, creative talent aside, they need to have basic life needs met. And that is absolute importance more than anything. And it is a major, major scar on the gaming industry, and a terrible black hole that has created, that crunch
and that does impact the games. That does impact the final product. It's measurably noticeable that impacts the final product and burns people, right? Because if even the simple fact that even if you get a couple of really good games out of a developer, you are burning them out. They may leave the industry entirely, and then their talent is gone, is wiped from the industry. So imagine if they burned out Hidetaka Miyazaki or Hideo Kojima. Right, like if those guys got burned out, we never get their games ever. Right, we never get their games ever again. So that would be a bit more noticeable maybe than some other developers, but it doesn't change the fact that that's still happening on a micro scale every day.
Yep.
So yeah,
but going back to what I said earlier about the architecture of the consoles, the parity between consoles and PCs, and the barrier of entries being lower than it's ever been for people to get into the gaming development space, I feel like the indie talent is amazing. Video games are flourishing. There's better quality, better products out there. And I find the game is the dream, the Silicon Valley laid out dream, is to create a studio, make a small game, get the attention of the bigwigs, get the money, the garbage can or the garbage truck full of cash backed up to your studio and just dumped in. Major success. Boom. Suddenly you're the It Takes Two, Jose Ferrer. I use that as a great example because it was grassroots that turned into a big money. That's all really, really good. I feel like there's better games than there's ever been. And I want to use another analogy. I want to talk about this too, because this is kind of what's going on, but it's not exactly the same, but it's a good idea. And it's what Marvel and Disney have done in funding different studios to make different Star Wars and Marvel games. And I feel like giving Spider-Man and Wolverine to Insomniac is genius. Let them do that. Give Respawn Entertainment Star Wars and let them do that. David Cage's studio Quantic Dream is making a new Star Wars game. Let him do that. Find the talent that's out there and give them the big IP. And that, I feel like, is the product of the landscape we've now found ourselves in after the indie movement has kind of evolved into what it is today. And that is creating great quality games and experiences at a lower cost, and then winning the attention of bigger IP and bigger publishing studios to enable their talent to rise to the top and create something more and better. And instead of the top down, which is forcing a studio that doesn't even want to make yet another whatever shooter game, falls off the side. That's kind of how it was back in the day. But now I feel like big publishers are scouting talent and they're going to buy a studio and they're going to bring them into their wing. Microsoft and Sony are now doing this. Consolidation is a problem in the industry. I understand that, but I feel like the money is flowing in the correct direction to get the most talent out into our gamers' eyes and get it in our hands. Like, I feel like it's awesome, and I'm looking forward to the Game Awards. I want to see what's coming, what's new, what the indie development studios are doing. I'm excited about Focus Entertainment, Annapurna, Devolver Digital. I love the fact that we have publishers that are funding these games, and I feel like I'm kind of ranting now, but I feel like it's all great. The corporate overlords, tax, like, gut the rich. I hate all that aspect of capitalism. I wish the art form could just flourish and like individuals would not be looked at as more than just a number. And I wish unionization would happen. And I'm all for like treating people as humans, and all the shutdowns, all the crunch, all the crap that comes with it sucks. That's the downside. But games are awesome and they've never been better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think it's one again, kind of, and I hope this doesn't sound like a cop-out answer, but I do think it's a little bit more complicated than can just be answered in like, 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, I brought up like 6 different topics that each could be their own
right,
and
it's
episode.
like it's sort of like pros, cons, pros, cons, pros,
Yeah,
cons.
yeah.
There's pros and cons on either side, but at the end of the day, I think that what we're seeing is sort of the notion of AAA studios investing to acquire kind of like mentality is ultimately, you're right. Like, we're in that space where they are trying to they're actually now paying attention to the talent and not just trying to say, you do this, we demand it. And that's good. That is a good overall, that spirit is a good thing. It's not without its pitfalls. It's not without its complications. But for now, at the very least, it's nice to see that the studio execs, the people in charge are actually paying attention now to who is talented and investing in those people.
Yep.
And they started that a long time ago. I mean, Sony's been doing that now for the better part of 10 years. But it's kind of reaching now. This is a good problem to have, this point at which we're saying like, oh, it's a good problem now that independent developers are being so heavily invested in that they're becoming AAA developers, because that means that now they're being awarded for their merit. They're being elevated for their merit, not just because they test well with people ages 18 to 35.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, well, cool. That is the episode. That I think that's a good stopping point and a good time to then ask our listeners what they think of this. What do they think of these spaces? AAA, indie, AA. Do you want to see, like, what's an indie developer you would love to see bought and fully fleshed out? What could the Hades team make if they had the budget of God of War, whatever, right? Like let's see that game, give us your ideas. Or are you just like, no, please get that dirty corporate blood diamond money out of my video games? I'm a purist. I want to buy everything off of Steam in the darkest corners. That's the only games I like. We want to hear all those. That's all valid. We want to hear it and more. Please, Termite, share with the listeners where they can share their thoughts if they have them.
Share with us your gripes against console exclusivity and why Supergiant Games should be able to publish Hades wherever they want and back off Sony and Microsoft.
I mean, they have now at this point. Go ahead.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Back off Microsoft. Back off Sony. Let Supergiant Games do what they want to do. Let them do what they do best. You can let us know your thoughts about all of that and more over at 80bitpodsmash.com. 80bit podsmash, podsmash.com. That's it. I spelled the whole thing. I don't ever do that usually. We have links to all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter. We have a Discord server. We have twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash. Those are all of our social outlets. There's a TikTok as well, 80bit podsmash. It's all the same. We made it super easy for everyone in our audience to know exactly where to go on any platform, except these new ones that are coming out. Like Elon Musk took over Twitter. It's kind of a downward spiral. It's kind of falling into a massive pit.
I'm so happy.
And now there's like
it's
Mastodon.
So fun watching him self-destruct. Yeah,
it is. But there's all these other social media outlets, Mastodon, and like, I don't even know. Like, there's so many names being thrown around now. And I'm like, that's a social media platform. So I say all of that because audience members, if you find yourself on a new social media platform and you want 80-Bit Podsmash to go there, let us know at these other more well-known things, but more specifically our Discord server, where you can reach us in a live chat fashion. Just go talk there. Just type into Discord and do the thing. Go over and do that. If you're finding us on Twitch, you're finding us on YouTube, and you see the videos of us talking heads and you're wondering what's going on, we have a weekly podcast that launches every Monday at midnight, and we talk about various topics in the gaming industry and how it relates to video games. Topics not in the gaming industry and how it relates to video games sometimes. And you can find all of our podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, over at where? 80bitpodsmash.com.
That's it.
That's the same website. Has links to all of it. It's all in one spot. So you just hit us up. There's an RSS feed there. You can throw that into any third-party app you would like. So please talk to us. We'd like to hear back. We don't like talking into an empty void.
Please love us.
Yeah,
empty
hit
void. That's all loneliness. All is void and all is chaos. And in that vein, next week we're gonna do a episode on the Soul and Console, which is our series that we're going through. We're going through each major video games console, each major video game console makers consoles, but like one at a time, where we go through the whole line. So we're in the middle of the series on the Nintendo handhelds, and so we're gonna be talking about the 3DS. So we're bumping up, where we drew a line in the sand and we said the DS and all of its various DSi and DS Lite and DS Yo-Yo, they all count as one. So then, but the 3DS is the new console because it had no backwards compatibility with so 3DS is the new.
3DS consoles play DS games.
Okay, well, some consoles have backwards compatibility with the previous console, so that's not. But this is a new thing. It is a new thing.
So it's a whole new it's awesome. There's so many great games on 3DS. I'm so excited.
There's like a million different 3DS models, and so they're all gonna be lumped together similarly. Yep. So talking about 3DS, and so you have look forward to next week.
Did you just like devolve into some? I think that wasn't a country accent. That wasn't like a backwoods Scottish accent. There wasn't like,
and it wasn't even like an offensive. Like it wasn't. At least maybe it sounds like it. It was just like. I was like
what that was.
Mash. It was like a mash.
Yeah. And with that, we will see you next week.